my pledge to you on this fight. I will not turn to the left or right. I will not soft pedal or back pedal, nor be intimidated. I will make no covenants with evildoers, neither will I show mercy to those who rig our markets in order to enrich themselves. As we soldier on in this fight, I today seek the indulgence of our judiciary. And I do so because I strongly believe that no administration in the history of this country has prosecuted corruption cases the way I have done. From ministers to governors, senior government officers, procurement officers, I have been on the front line.
In 2015, President Uhuru Kenyatta declared corruption a national security threat and vowed to tackle the vice head-on. On several occasions, he declared that no one who engages in corrupt practices should be spared. Prominent Kenyan officials, appointed and elected as well, have equally found themselves on the receiving end. One such example is Nairobi Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko, recently arrested on graft-related charges and consequently barred from office, leading the way for the national government's takeover of co-functions at the Nairobi County. Now, temporary reprieve today for Governor Sonko, yes, as the High Court suspended an impeachment motion against him in the Nairobi County Assembly. But prior to this, it is believed President Uhuru Kenyatta, while meeting a majority of the CT members of County Assembly, urged them to act in the greater good and consequently drop the impeachment motion against Sonko. What does this speak to the war against corruption? Is this the only way to focus on service delivery as advised? Has the fight against corruption been reduced to lip service? And that's the big story tonight. Good evening, I'm Jesse Rogers. Many thanks for making time for the big story. Allow me to appreciate the presence of our guest, Steve Ogola, who's already in studio. He'll help us delve deeper into this particular topic, not just the corruption angle, but as well as the transfer of key functions from the Nairobi County to the national government. All right, let me bring in our lead reporter, Sophia Wanuna. Good evening, Sophia. It would be interesting to get your take, as well as your guest, that's Harrison Kinyanjui, as he actually represented Sonko he led the team in obtaining orders suspending the impeachment motion that was facing the city governor. Why now, and what exactly would this lead to in eventuality? Over to you, Sophia.
Indeed, good evening, Jesse. The embattled Nairobi County Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko receiving that temporal reprieve earlier today with the court stopping the impeachment proceedings and directing that until all due process in accordance with standing orders of the County Assembly are met, then that stands suspended. Remember last week when we discussed the matters of the leadership issue in Nairobi County, and I interviewed Peter Imwatok, the member of the County Assembly from Makongeni Ward, who is also the mover of this impeachment motion. He was confident and ready, he said, to go ahead with the impeachment, this despite the transfer of functions, that is some of the functions of the Nairobi County to the national government. He said that was good. However, for him, it was just making a further stronger case for why the leadership of Mike Mbuvi Sonko was no longer tenable. And he was confident that come tomorrow, Tuesday, he would be, in fact, be able to debate this, pass it. Of course, it's the Senate that actually does the impeachment. However, it was then earlier today that we saw that suit from the governor. The suit is against the Peter Imwatok, the MCA, who's the mover, as I mentioned, of this motion, the County Assembly of Nairobi, the Speaker of the County Assembly, as well as the Speaker of the Senate, if I've gotten them all in that list. But to talk a little bit more about just what transpired, what are the issues Sonko has specifically regarding this motion of impeachment, I have with me his lawyer, Harrison Kinyanjui, this evening. Thank you for making time for us. So let's begin with we've known and heard about the potential proceedings coming against the governor in the County Assembly for some time now. You've gotten this temporary reprieve for the governor. What was his issue? with the impeachment motion?
Well, I think I would have to qualify my statement so that I do not breach the sub judice rule, so that I do not then transgress that boundary. But I need to state, because it's in the public domain and also in the court case itself, His Excellency's objection is on the due process. Number one, Standing Order number 62 of the Nairobi City County Assembly specifies in detail what the mover of such a motion ought to comply with. There was no such compliance. The clerk is at the center of the entire process. The clerk of the county assembly happens to be Mr. Jacob Ngwele. Mr. Jacob Ngwele has a court order in petition number 194 of last year, which forbids his removal until the case is heard and determined. The determination is yet to happen, meaning that he is still the clerk. Now, there is another person who purportedly is the acting county clerk, county assembly clerk. Now, she has no mandate in law to do it. So we cannot escape from the fact that there was no compliance. And I don't see how Honorable Imwatok is going to comply retrospectively. He cannot go back now and refile his motion for debate tomorrow or soon thereafter if he does not comply by service on the clerk. It also says in a very elaborate way that you must have an affirmation. You must say that I know this to be true of my own knowledge or from whatever source of information that I have. He didn't do that. But even more fundamentally, Standing Order number 72 of the Nairobi City County Assembly specifies any person who is facing such impeachment proceedings must be served with the report of the select committee that has sat on the issue. He was never served with such a report. And Honorable Imwatok mentions that in support of his motion, he has this annexure 1, 2, 3, 4, up to 18. He never produced a single one of them to anyone, including the members of the public who may be interested in knowing exactly what evidence do you have as against the governor. So let's not beat about the bush. Let's not have something in the wind or whip up emotion. City county residents that we have all these going on against the governor. What? You have nothing really, in fact. But let's also not play politics with the serious and very grave aspect of the impeachment of a sitting governor. The removal of a sitting governor is circumscribed in law in very elaborate terms. So when a county assembly purports to engage in such a move and overrides the law, then the court has a right to intervene. And that's exactly what happened. And the court said, wait a minute, you haven't complied. I do not see the evidence that you complied. So if you want to move it again any other time and you comply, well, that will be a different story. But for now, Honorable Imwatok did not comply.
All right, so as we finalize this, pretty much it's a technicality in terms of what we're calling a temporary reprieve, in that the issues raised against the governor are still standing, and we will wait to see what action, if at all, Imwatok takes, the member of county assembly.
Wait. Yeah. Honorable Imwatok says that there has been a takeover, quote unquote, of the functions of the county assembly, and therefore that there is, quote unquote, evidence of the inefficiency of the governance of the Nairobi City County incumbent governor. Wrong. Let's get it right. Article 187 of the Constitution provides for the takeover. However, and this is my own personal take, it has nothing to do with the governor's position. Section 118 of the County Government Act provides for the transfer. So there is a legislative framework for that step to happen. However, if you look at Section 121, there is also an elaborate procedure. First of all, the line ministry that is affected, for instance, in terms of transport, the Ministry of Transport is the one that assesses the need for the takeover. That is in law. So you do not have a call to State House. And again, I reiterate, maybe those advising His Excellency the President are not familiar with that provision of the law. Maybe they need to re-educate themselves again. But this is my own personal take. It is a ministry that then assesses through inquiry or having someone go on the ground and do a report. There has to be a report. There was no report in this instance on all those key portfolios that were taken over. And then Parliament has to approve of this. And then also the duration has to be specified. So you don't have an open-ended, quote-unquote, takeover. So to disabuse Honorable Imwatok or anyone having the idea that His Excellency was stepping outside the law, unfortunately, that is in the County Government Act. And I would suggest to all honorable members of county assemblies, let me repeat that, assemblies, not just Nairobi City County, familiarize yourself with the provisions of the County Government Act. It heaps upon you, for instance, if you're out there in Morangan County, the creation of a village elder, for instance. And you are hearing of, these Nyumba Kumi people saying that we are not being paid, we haven't been paid. Come on, they're provided for there. That is your jurisdiction to do, but you're trying to blame the governor. You're turning in wherever place that there is. The majority of these honorable MCAs, I'm afraid to say, have not read their mandate, do not familiarize themselves with their mandate. And then, unfortunately, this is what is visiting His Excellency the Governor. He is actually supposed to be, in their eyes, the powerful governor running from constituency 1 up to the 17th, doing what they should be doing. Let's get it right. No, that's not it.
All right. Thank you very much for making time for the big story. This evening, Harrison Kinyanjui, one of the lawyers representing Mike Mbuvi Sonko. Of course, it's not just this matter of the impeachment that now the governor perhaps can breathe easy tonight, Jesse. Remember, he's also facing corruption-related charges, which in fact have seen him barred from accessing his office. Thus compounding the leadership crisis, if you like, in Nairobi for some time now, keeping in mind that he has not had a deputy governor for the past 2 years. But to the point the lawyer was making, Kinyanjui, about the members of the county assemblies familiarizing themselves with what, especially their mandate and what the law says regarding some of these issues. Remember last week when we spoke to MCA Imwatok regarding the takeover and whether in his view, they had a role to play in it. And he said, we'll wait to see what the lawyers say. I mean, you'd imagine at the end of the day, or at the very least, a representative of the people need to know when they should be engaged, when they are to be involved, and their role, if at all, as far as the law is concerned, on such crucial and critical processes. But Jesse, this one is one we'll continue to definitely cover, and a lot being said regarding the way forward, because as we speak now, there is a voter who's moved to court on the transfer of functions. A significant number of those functions, 80% from Nairobi County to the National Assembly, arguing that it's unprocedural, saying that it does not follow the spirit of the law, of the Constitution as well. And another opposing this process and has been vocal about it is the leader of majority in the Senate. So that's Kipchumba Murkomen, and pretty much in his statement and submissions in Senate, talking about that now Nairobi County, in terms of leadership, is more or less like a shell. And the county assembly members, what are they really oversighting if majority of those functions have been taken to the National Assembly, to the national government? I beg your pardon, Jesse.
All right, many thanks, Sophia. But before we let you go, it's quite true that we've seen a lot of developments, especially within Nairobi County, in regards to what's happening with Mike Sonko. But having the president, who's believed to have actually weighed in on an impeachment possibility, what does this translate to? Are they trying to clear up their own house, a mess they made? What do you think we should look into this?
Yeah, it's very interesting because that bite, what we played the president saying at the top of the show, and he talked about each and every individual carrying their own cross, that if in fact they are facing corruption charges, he will not interfere, nobody should reach out to him, due process should take place. But there is a sense and a feeling that in that meeting on Saturday in State House, where the president met the members of County Assembly, and present in that meeting as well was Senator Sakaja, you had the Speaker of the Nairobi County Assembly, as well as the Speaker of the Senate, was seen as interference, because whilst it began with him explaining to the MCAs what this transfer of function is really going to work and how it's going to play out, and that was in the best interests of the people of Nairobi County, a question was raised then, okay, if you're looking to make Nairobi County work and great again, if you like, what happens to the little, if not so little, matter of the impeachment of the governor? And he said to have encouraged the MCAs to consider the route that will make sure the county is not losing time and money. And so at the end of that whole sit down with them, you would have imagined he'd have said, let's due process follow or go through, do what you deem to be right in as far as the functions you have in law, but he was said to encourage them not to go ahead with the impeachment. And so it is seen as though this was the intention from the very beginning, because remember, during the campaigns, the selling point and the pitch was elect him governor, he'll be the politician, and the then former governor, deputy governor Polycarp Igathe will be the one actually running the county. And it appears up to now, Sonko has been ahead of them in a sense, because he agreed to that, of course, non-committal deal at the time. But then look at what happened was it a year down the line? The deputy governor resigned, and he has managed to stay in office 2 years without a DG. Again, how did this happen? Did Senate drop the ball in as far as protection of devolution? Has Senate dropped the ball now in as far as, again, devolution and how it should work, in the sense that it was shocking, it was a breaking story last week to hear of this transfer of functions, no public participation, the county assembly unaware of it. So when we see the likes of Senator Sakaja sit there and be seen to endorse such a process, the big question that arises is where, again, is the voice that protects devolution in and of itself? Because if you're seeing 80% of those functions being transferred to the Nairobi County Assembly, we'll wait to see, rather transferred to the national government, we'll wait to see how the court rules on that. But finally, Jesse, to your point about is the Jubilee government trying to fix the mess that Nairobi County has been? Some would argue if they see this as a mess they're trying to fix, they originated and began the mess. This was their candidate. They are the ones who, when they saw things not working out as perhaps they should, formed the Nairobi Regeneration team, which you remember at the time making grand promises about resigning if they didn't meet certain timelines within 60 days. All that never happened. And so the residents of Nairobi have largely been seen to be taken for a ride in the sense of those promises. And then there is this impeachment process. Why come in and interfere with it? They talk about saving time, that a by-election or whatever it is that would spin off of this would be costly, and that it would mean stalling of operations in the county. Many would argue a lot of operations have largely been going haywire for the last couple of months. So a lot of balls up in the air, but definitely one thing that has left Nairobi County, Jesse, is those lions. I don't know if you remember them.
All right, many thanks. Our lead reporter right there, Sophia Wanuna, truly doing justice, just breaking down the developments that have happened in the recent days. And on that note, I'd like to engage our guest in studio. As I'd earlier hinted, Steve Ogola, who's an advocate, is already in studio, as well as Wanjiro Gikonyo, who's the national coordinator of the Institute for Social Accountability, TISA. Gentlemen and lady, many thanks for making time. I'd like to begin on the most recent developments. This weekend, it is believed that President Uhuru Kenyatta actually, told the MCAs to look at the bigger picture, in terms of this impeachment motion against the Nairobi governor. Let me begin with you, Wanjiro Gikonyo. Are we undermining the anti-corruption message? What do you read from this request to the MCAs not to impeach Sonko?
In fact, yeah, thank you so much. It's really not just about corruption. It's about the role of the county assembly in terms of oversight over the executive of the county. So what you're seeing here is the county assembly asserting itself in the way that it should, and then you have political interference from the president. And of course, this plays in very much to the fact that the president has signed an agreement, an illegal agreement with the governor to transfer Nairobi functions without the approval of the county assembly, without public participation in the way it's supposed to happen. And so an impeachment would scuttle those plans. An impeachment would actually be the best thing for residents of Nairobi, because it will give us a chance to vote in another governor. So what we're seeing here really is a level of political interference that is undermining the interests of the residents of Nairobi and really undermining the spirit of the law. Nothing stops the president from trying to persuade members of the county assembly, but really it demonstrates the extent to which he does not embrace the principles of the constitution, the independence, the distinctness of county governments. So on very many levels, it's a move that puts the president in extremely bad light, and really just shows how much this administration, led by the president, do not support devolution, are intent on really subverting and violating the constitution at every possible turn.
All right. Now, Steve Ogola, same question, because we've seen the lobbying happening even before. What does this talk about the sway that political interference in Kenya has to, various functions, the anti-corruption message, the growth of devolution as well?
Now, impeachment is a logical consequence of violation of the Constitution. Impeachment is not intended to be for political amusement. So the president has no role in intervening in the impeachment of Governor Sonko. Why do I say so? Is there a reason that could support a cause for impeachment? The answer is yes. If you look at the Constitution, Article 73 of the Constitution, it says that public office is held in trust, and public authority is exercised the benefit of the people that intend that are intended to be served by the Nairobi County. Trust is eroded the moment you are charged with corruption-related offenses. That's why Justice Mumbi Ngugi said that once you are charged with the offense of corruption, you ought to stay away from office. Why? You're not staying away to fulfill some political or moral commitment. You're staying away to honor that office. It's a constitutional office. You're staying away to preserve the integrity of that office. You cannot be expected to preside over the affairs and the finances of the county when you're being accused of pilfering, wasting, and stealing those finances. Now, if you have a governor that cannot sit in office to perform substantive gubernatorial functions, then there's a ground for impeachment. There is a ground for impeachment. Now, once that ground for impeachment crystallizes, the president or any other person cannot intervene to short-circuit the process. So it's wrong for the president to demobilize MCAs and to whip them out of the impeachment process. Impeachment, as I've said, is not for political amusement. Impeachment is strictly in compliance with the law to preserve the institutional and functional integrity of the counties. Now, what you have seen as a consequence, it also means that MCAs do not understand. Either they do not understand their mandate, or they are not as independent as they may want us to believe, or as the Constitution had hoped that they would be. Because if I was serving as an MCA, I would tell the president, Mr. President, you have no role to intervene in the county affairs of Nairobi. You have no role at all, no direct role. You cannot summon MCs and tell them, proceed or do not proceed. If he does that, then he demoralizes those people who believe in the functional independence of MCAs. So in short, is there ground for impeachment of Governor Sonko? The answer is yes. Should the president ought to have intervened? The answer is no. Should the MCAs proceed with the impeachment proceedings? The answer is yes. So those are the short answers to your questions, Jesse.
All right, and now all this in respect with the High Court decision to suspend the impeachment motion, citing failure to comply with standing orders. But let me cross over to you real briefly, Wanjiru Gikonyo. Are we looking at devolution in danger right now? What do you make of this illegality in terms of the transfer of certain functions to the national government in terms of public participation? Is this bad for devolution?
That's a complete understatement. This is a blatant attempt to kill devolution. And the reason is first of all, the manner in which it's been done, without due public participation, without the role of the county assembly, that in itself is an illegality. It's unconstitutional. The courts will pronounce themselves on that. And then there's the substantive proposal, which is to transfer major functions, which amount really to recentralizing the authority of Nairobi County. Now, whereas the Intergovernmental Act anticipates that there are functions that can be transferred between the levels, from national to county or county to national, and provides a mechanism for that, the extent of the transfer of functions really amounts to recentralizing powers. And if you look at the history of this administration, you'll see where this came from. We had a very centrist physical planning act or bill process. We had Namata, which was conceived around 2015, and there was a presidential directive on Namata, which looks at roads and other infrastructure and tries to centralize that. So this is not the first time this administration has tried to re-centralize functions of Nairobi County. But it is the latest installation of the attempt to re-centralize. And unfortunately, Governor Sonko believes Nairobi's functions are vested in him. They are not. The executive authority of the county is vested in the governor, as well as the CEC, the County Executive Committee. So the decisions he takes have to be taken in conjunction with the CEC, and then have to be endorsed by the County Assembly. And those decisions, of course, have to be legal, because when you have fundamental changes that would impact the fundamental structure of devolution, then those matters have to go to a national referendum. But we'll wait for the courts to determine that, and a lawyer like Steve can possibly shine more light. So, in short, we have a situation, a very sad situation in Nairobi, where the governor has failed. The governor has played musical chairs with the leadership, the county executive level, with the chief officer level. There have been, a merry-go-round in terms of failure to keep people in a steady position. Now, because of this, the county services have really fallen by the wayside. Nairobi County has very competent staff, very qualified staff. It's got, the capacity to deliver services, but it has failed political leadership. And the political leadership did not start failing with Governor Sonko. It has failed abjectly with Governor Sonko. But when you look at this issue of revenue that is being brought up, that Nairobi County revenue has been falling, the decline in revenue started under the previous governor, Governor Kidero. Because when the county government started, Nairobi's revenue began a steady climb. For some 2-3 years, revenue was increasing as the county was collecting more revenue so that it can support its services. And then the decline, happened. So and of course, once revenue is declining, it means there is corruption going on. Then we had the protracted the post-election, the protracted period around the 2017 elections, where revenues continued to fall, and revenues have never really recovered. So it means there is massive corruption going on, and this impeachment is way overdue. And yes, the president, as head of state, really the political leader of this country, governing under a democratic, devolved constitution, has a responsibility to uphold the constitution and not usurp it, not undermine it, not violate it in the manner that that proposed sham transfer agreement has been done. Yes, so this is an attempt once again to kill devolution in Kenya. And this is history really literally repeating itself, because the same thing happened to the local authorities, same thing happened to Majimbo at independence, same thing happened to the local authorities throughout the 80s and 70s and 80s. So Nairobians need to wake up and realize we need to fight for our right for direct participation, for direct local governance, and we can only get that through devolved government.
Quite so indeed. All right, now let's take a short break in that regard. We do appreciate this input by our guests. We'll definitely get back, still taking a look at the delicate intricacies that have surrounded the Nairobi County in the last couple of weeks. We'll definitely shed more light on this this transfer of certain functions in the CBD in Nairobi County, and as well as the fight against corruption. Do stay with us.